Thus is part 15 of What If Naruto Lost His Sight. Link in description. If you enjoy this what if, then like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Blindsided by twice the trouble. Start chapter 39. Hope you enjoy. T1. Tilde 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 tilde. Itachi, can you do the honors? Before I could react, colors burst out of nowhere. Brown covered the walls and black the furniture. The man named Kisame was blue for some reason, while I barely caught a pair of bright red eyes before his teammate burst into crows. I froze as I gazed around the room, unsure how my eyes could have fixed themselves. A moment later I realized that wasn't the case. Uchihas were known for their genjutsus, and Itachi, as much as Sasuke hates to admit it, was still an Uchiha. Kai, I shouted as broke the illusion. There was a small sound before everything appeared back as I was, black, with its chakra echo shapes. Nice job, Kit, now you're getting it, the Kyuubi commented. I let him know this wasn't the time as I went back to glaring at my opponents. You're out of it already. Aren't you supposed to be weak against genjutsu? What gives? HNN, Itachi grunted, a small note of confusion present. Figuring it was either now or never, I created a few clones before arming ourselves with kunais. They didn't even have time to move before we lunged at them as one. I had hoped that the chaos of multiple attackers would give me the advantage against them, but no matter how much we all attacked the two, we didn't get a single hit. It was almost embarrassing how easy they made it look. I had at least 24 clones, attacking them with everything they had, but they dodged and parried as if it was just one academy student playing ninja. A few minutes of this and they seemed only to grow bored while I grew frustrated. In one last-ditch attempt, I lunged at Kisame sloppily, accidentally leaving myself wide open. The possibly blue man took full advantage of this as he grabbed my wrist and wrenched it behind my back. We're done playing around, kid, he breathed in my ear, before throwing me across the room once again. This time it was into one of the beds, breaking the frame into pieces. If that didn't prove that it was a more powerful throw than before, then the increased pain sure did. All I could do was lay there and try to breathe around what now was definitely broken ribs. I struggled to my feet again, coughing on the dust flying through the air. I glanced up at them, noting that Kisame was moving towards me once again while Itachi held back. As he moved, he was reaching for the large shape he had attached to his back. He held it to his side lightly, pulling some of the bandages off around the hilt. As soon as the bandages loosened, my echoes disappeared. I blinked in surprise, confusion coloring my thoughts. It wasn't the first time my chakra echoes failed, but usually I felt the jutsu itself fizzle out before my sight went. This time my echoes were still being sent out, but none of them were coming back. I didn't think I was going to have to use Samahata against you, even just this little bit, he said, a grin in his voice. I could still hear his footsteps approaching me, but now accompanied by the scrape of what was probably his sword. Don't kill him, Itachi said flatly, as if he were commenting on the weather. I won't, Kisame said, his tone exasperated. Probably. I swallowed hard, nervousness starting to set in. I knew I was outclassed here, especially without my echoes working. I didn't know what to do. Any suggestions? I asked the Kyuubi silently. Nope, he answered, getting a groan from me. So you wanna watch me die? Don't be so dramatic. I'm sure Jiraiya heard about it and is on his way now. He'd be too busy ogling women to hear much of anything. You might not think it, but Jiraiya is damn good at his job. If something's going on in this town, he'll know about it, he said with such confidence that I was starting to believe him. Plus, these two weren't exactly subtle. I'm sure half the residents heard what's going on in here. So just buy him some time. Pretty much. That, I can do. My teammate hits harder than you, I wheezed, once my coughing subsided. And we're only genin. Kisami's footsteps hesitated. I highly doubt Itachi's brother is that strong, he answered simply, taking the bait. I struggled to hide a smirk as I continued. Oops, sorry, I wasn't specific. My bad. I was talking about my other teammate, I said, my grin making itself known. She's this pink-haired civilian born who's really smart, but isn't all that strong. Yet her punches are ferocious. I don't know how she does it. If you ask her really nice, she might give you pointers. Hell, I'll even introduce. Before I could finish my words, I was shoved against the wall, a large hand wrapped around my throat. Well, that didn't go as planned. Shut up. You talk a lot of shit for a little leaf boy, Kisame growled. It's my charm, I struggled to say with what little air I had. Not charming enough. How about this? I asked as crossed my fingers in my favorite hand sign. I figured that 50 to 100 clones would create enough chaos to get me free. But just as I released the chakra to form them, it was ripped away, leaving me without even a single smoke cloud for my problems. How's what? Did you do something? I can't tell. His mocking tone made me sure he knew exactly what was going on. If it was those clones again, you're going to be in for a real disappointment. My eyes widened in surprise, more from habit than anything, the reality of the situation starting to hit home. You see this sword, he said, accompanied by a scrapping sound to my left. I assumed he was raising his sword for me to see. I probably would have found it amusing, if I could breathe. It eats chakra, any of it nearby is fair game. I began struggling against his grip more, my dangling legs kicking out at him, my arms clawing at his hand, but to no avail. My limbs were too short, and nails too dull to even make him flinch. All he did was laugh at my attempts. I said don't kill him, Itachi reminded. I wasn't going to, Kisame said, his voice fading a bit. I couldn't tell if it was because he turned his head or that I was about to pass out. I'm just having a little fun. Your fun ends in their death. If you kill him, Leader Sama will be upset. Kit, channel my chakra while he's distracted. But his sword. I doubt it can eat the chakra before it leaves the body, at least without physical contact. So do it quick, because you're going to pass out in about 10 seconds. This better work, I said as I drew on the chakra he offered. Towards your fingers. Claws. Of course. I did as he instructed, feeling the tingling as my nails elongated from the small bit of chakra. It wasn't the same as the full chakra claws, but they were definitely sharp enough to do some damage. Without a second thought, I plunged them into his hand, making him drop me with a hiss. Damn it, he exclaimed, as I almost choked on the rush of air that entered my lungs. Without waiting until I recovered, I quickly scrambled to my feet and off to the opposite side of the room. But before I got very far, I heard a whoosh of air only moments before something hard connected with my right leg. A crunching sound came from where it hit, giving me only enough time to think, well, that's not good, before it exploded in pain. With a cry, I tumbled the short ways to the ground, my hand automatically seeking out my wounded leg. My fingers ghosted over the spot right above the knee. Even barely touching it, I was still able to grimly note the large indent that hadn't been there before. One down, one leg to go, Kisame said happily. His footsteps started up again, slow and steady, as if he were dragging out this moment for as long as possible. With a start, I realized that this guy actually liked this, making others cower and fear him. Itachi may have been there simply for the mission, but Kisame wasn't. The mission was an excuse for him. It was fight he was here for, particularly the end when he was in complete control of his opponent's fate, and they knew it. I turned around to face him, knowing now why my stalling tactics didn't work. He wanted to see fear and pain, and my words were putting up a controlled mask, the exact opposite. It was a challenge to him, not a distraction. Great deduction. Could have thought of it a minute earlier, before he shattered your leg. Can you fix it? I asked, scooching myself backwards, trying to put more distance between Kisame and me as possible. Not before he has the chance to break the other one. I let out a small whine, half in response to the Kyuubi's words and half from accidentally jostling my leg during my slow escape. I heard Kisame chuckle in delight. So you're finally realizing your predicament, You have every right to be afraid, he said proudly. Afraid? Nah. I just realized we aren't getting our deposit back on this room, I said, summoning up all the false bravado I could muster. It wasn't much, but it was better than sounding terrified. I had plans for that money. That's the least you have to worry about, he said. Plus, even if this room was completely intact, it's not like you'd see the money. After all, you're coming with us. Before I could come up with a good retort, or even a bad one, there was a loud explosion on my left. I ducked down, swiftly covering my head as I felt debris pelt me from that same direction. I heard someone's picking on my student, a very recognizable voice said from where the explosion took place. That's not the smartest thing in the world, but hey, it's better than trying to kidnap him. There was an awkward silence between them as they no doubt stared at each other. I could almost hear the clash of wills from my spot on the floor. You were trying to kidnap him, weren't you? Jiraiya asked. What gave you the impression that we weren't? In fact, we still are, since there's nothing you can do to stop. Kisame, we're leaving, Itachi stated before the soft footsteps started moving away. What? But we almost have the kid. Why are we stopping now? We've drawn too much attention here already. Fighting a Sannin will only make it worse. We're leaving. The footsteps continued to fade as Itachi left the room. After a stunned second or two, Kisame growled in annoyance and began stomping away as well. Soon after, my echo stuttered to live to see Kisame holster his weapon and leave the room. I glanced over at Jiraiya, noting that he still had his guard up. And that he was standing in front of a large hole in the wall that led to the outside. Sensei, I asked, only to get shushed by the adult. I grumbled lightly but made no other sound until he did, figuring he had a good reason for it. Can you still hear them? He asked after about a minute. I focused on my ears for a brief moment. No, I answered, I think they shunshined. Jiraiya nodded before taking the few steps necessary to get to me. He knelt down and seemed to examine my wounds. You look pretty messed up, kid, he said as he observed my leg. You don't say, I answered, giving him a flat look. We don't have time for your sass, Jiraiya stated. Ask the Kyuubi how long it's going to take to heal. Your shoulder's all but done already. Your ribs are just a few fractures, so they'll be done by tomorrow morning. It's your leg that's going to take the most time. How long? 2 days. 2 days. Why 2 days? Your lower femur is all but shattered. I have to put all the pieces back together before I can even start to heal it. If I don't, you wouldn't be walking. But 2 days. That's just how long you won't be able to use it. It's going to take the rest of the week for it to be completely healed. I groaned out loud, making my sensei cock his head curiously. Well, 2 days before I can use it and a week before it's completely healed. Sounds great. Hurts like a bitch. Well, it's probably going to hurt even more. Jiraiya climbed to his feet again and started shuffling through the rubble, obviously looking for something. We have to go. I can't walk, I reminded him as he reached down and pulled one of our bags free. He continued looking around, presumably for the other. And it's dark. I know, but the landlords are going to be up here now that it's quieted down, and there's no way I'm footing the bill for this mess. So I have to walk on a shattered leg just because you don't want to pay for repairs. Also because I don't feel like it's particularly safe here anymore. Not after 2S rank missing nins tried to snatch my student right from under my nose. Ah, here it is. He pulled the second bag out and immediately started searching though it as he made his way back towards me. Under your nose. You weren't even here. You went off with some flirty chick. I don't have time to explain to you the subtleties of information gathering. Just know that I had everything under control. If you did, I wouldn't be sitting here with a broken leg. Alright, maybe not everything, he admitted. He pulled a small container out of his bag before popping it open and removing something small and round from it. Once he was back near me, he grabbed my hand and dropped it into my palm. Take this, it should help. What is it? I asked, glancing at the object wearily. Pain pill, you're going to need it. Despite his words, I didn't move to take it. I didn't particularly like medicine, especially since it never seemed to work right on me. Every time I took something, it either worked too well, or not at all. Now that I thought of it, the Kyuubi may have been toying with me, but that didn't make me any more eager to take it. Do I really? I'm going to have to carry you, and trust me, there's no good way of carrying someone with a broken leg, especially with it so close to your knee, he explained. If your leg hurts like a bitch, now, imagine what it will be like as it's getting jostled and bent for most of the night. Pass me the water, I said after a moment of thought. End chapter 39. Start chapter 40. Blindsided by twice the trouble. T1. Tilde 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 tilde. Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. 30 minutes later. How are you doing back there? Jiraiya asked, glancing at the student perched on his back. He watched said boy wince slightly as they landed on another tree branch. He felt bad for him, but it was better than the cursing he got when they started. He figured the pain meds must be seriously kicking in now that they had time to work. Are we there yet? Naruto asked, his voice slurring. Jiraiya could just see his student's eyes drift shut behind the goggles before he turned forward again. We just left a half hour ago. I want to be at least 3 hours out before we even think of stopping for the night. That's a long time. Yes it is. So are we there yet? No, not yet, Jiraiya said with a small sigh. He didn't think that the pain pill was supposed to be very brain-altering, but the kid was acting like he was given the strong stuff. Then again, he vaguely remembered Naruto mentioning that he tended to have strange reactions to drugs. Maybe one of those reactions was that acetaminophen acts like morphine. Damn, Jiraiya cursed under his breath. Where? Naruto asked, his head popping of his sensei's shoulder briefly to glance around. What? The damn, where is it? This is going to be a long night, Jiraiya muttered to himself. Why? Because you can't find the dam? Naruto asked, making Jiraiya sigh again. Yes, especially since there is no dam. Why isn't there a dam? We're in the middle of the forest, Naruto. A dam would be near a lake. Or, most likely cause a lake. Do you see a lake, or even a river around here? There was a pause as Jiraiya felt Naruto's head move back and forth in order to get a look around. No, he answered, his voice questioning. That means there's no dam. Naruto was silent for a long moment, making Jiraiya hopeful that this whole conversation was over. Unfortunately for him, he was wrong. There could be a dam. No, there can't be. Yes, there can. No, there really can't. Sensei, Naruto said, sounding like a toddler mimicking their parents. Just because I can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. It's dark and I'm blind. I can't see anything. Jiraiya glanced back at him, startled by the announcement. He figured he would have to pry a confession like that from him forcefully, but here he was just announcing it to the world simply because of pain meds. I think you should sleep now, he told him as he took a mental note to limit the use of pain meds in the future. The boy had his chin resting on Jiraiya's shoulder as if he was about to pass out any second. But he was a stubborn brat, so he really wasn't surprised when he got an angry pout in response. I'm not joking, Sensei. I really can't see. A sneaky rat took my eyes when I was sleeping and now I can't even see your nose. But I'm pretty sure it's like really big. Naruto. Like really, really big. Naruto. Like so big that you could knock out people with it if you wanted to. I'm sure, was all he said instead. Now go to sleep. But I want to see the dam. You just said yourself you can't see it. Oh, Naruto said quietly, sounding a put off by this revelation. Jiraiya groaned in exasperation. How about this? You go to sleep, and if I find a dam, I'll wake you so you can experience it for yourself. How does that sound? Good, I guess, he murmured, his head already lolling to one side. Good, now go to sleep. But I'm not sleepy, he stated through an outrageous yawn. Go to sleep anyways. Jiraiya heard the boy mumble something about not sleeping, but his voice tapered off before he could finish whatever he was saying. Jiraiya felt his head thump against his neck as the boy finally passed out. Stopping on a branch, Jiraiya looked back at his student, seeing a peaceful look on his face despite everything he was going through at the moment. He really hated seeing Minato's son like this, being forced to pretend everything was alright when he couldn't even see the color of his own jumpsuit. Yes, he's done surprisingly well, but it didn't mean he wasn't still hurting. He doubted the boy had even fully dealt with his disability in any emotional capacity. He'd been too busy making sure no one found out that he hadn't had the time to fully accept his new state. It was for that reason that Jiraiya hoped that Tsunade could fix Naruto. Then he would never have to go through such a thing. He would just become a great ninja who became even greater because of what he learned when he was blind. Jiraiya sighed, hoping he wasn't making it a habit. Regardless, I hope you don't remember that conversation, kid, he told Naruto gently as he started moving again. Because if you do, you're really going to be kicking yourself in the butt tomorrow. And I'll have a lot of explaining to do. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Next morning. When I woke up next, my brain felt like it was full of fog. I could hardly remember what happened the day before, let alone why I was asleep in the first place. I groaned, sitting up slowly, my ribs twinging briefly in protest. They were a little achy, but not that bad, I guess. I was having a hard time remembering why they were hurt in the first place, mostly because my head just didn't want to work. I rubbed my temples in an attempt to get some brain function back. But other than a vague memory of being thrown through a bed frame, it did nothing. I shook my head as my hands dropped to the ground. I figured then it was probably a good get up and find my sensei, so I did. Or at least, I tried to. As soon as my right leg went to move, pain shot up it, making me hiss. I ran a hand along my injury as the memories of yesterday came back to me. I winced, and not just from the broken bone. What the hell gave me the idea that I could outwit not one, but two S-ranked ninjas? Especially ones that seemed to already know about me along with my strengths and weaknesses. Overall, that wasn't one of my best days. Kit, you have no idea. The Kyuubi rumbled, amusement in his voice. Well, if you had been more helpful, I probably would have been fine. I told you before, I'm not fighting your battles for you. The only reason I helped so much with Gaara was because I'm somewhat responsible for my brother. As far as everything else, you're going to have to figure it out on your own. I was almost kidnapped by S-rank ninjas. How was I supposed to figure that out? You got away, didn't you? Obviously you must have figured something out. Even if it did end with an injury. Yet you're raising me for it. No, I'm raising you for something completely different that you don't remember. Yet, I'm sure you will soon, and then the real fun will begin. The Kyuubi's voice held an audible grin that had me frowning. That fox was up to something, and I couldn't help but think that it can't be good. Oh, you're awake. Good. I was worried you were going to sleep through the entire day as well, Jiraiya's voice said somewhere to my left. I heard the shifting of leaves, followed by a soft thump of him sitting down. I frowned, a bit bothered that I didn't notice him approach. I filed that away under things I needed to work on, and went on. When did we stop? I asked curiously as I examined the wounded leg with my fingers. There was a makeshift splint on it now which consisted of 2 large sticks and a lot of gauze. It went down past the knee probably so I couldn't hurt myself by accidentally moving it. About midnight, he answered, a scraping sound coming from his spot now. After a long moment of not being able to figure out what it was, I activated my chakra echoes to give me a little help. For some reason he was sharpening a stick with a kunai. I couldn't figure out for the life of me why, but it apparently had his full attention. Now it's almost 11 in the morning. I slept that long, I asked in bewilderment. You were asleep for 2.5 hours before that, but yeah. Apparently pain meds knock you out pretty quick, among other things, he stated, murmuring the last words of his statement. What? I frowned at him, almost missing it entirely. His kunai paused for a moment before starting up again as the Kyuubi chuckled to himself. Nothing, he said simply. On a completely unrelated note, what do you remember about yesterday evening? Before or after the hotel incident? After. Not much. You said I was sleeping so I shouldn't remember anything anyways, I answered, kind of confused. Why did you ask? You were a little loopy after the drugs kicked in and before you passed out. I was just curious what you remembered of that conversation. We had a conversation. Guess that answers my question. He examined the stick for a moment before tossing it to the side and dusting himself off as he climbed to his feet. I'll start getting lunch ready. Then we can keep moving if you think you're up for it. If not, we can wait until tomorrow. One day won't make much a difference. I watched him busy himself by searching through his bag, trying to find the scroll that had our rations. He was muttering about how he should have labeled them when a question popped into my head, making an icy fear creep through me. If I was as loopy as he said, did I say anything I didn't want him to know? Could I have told him I'm blind? Sensei, I asked, getting a small hum in response. What was that conversation about last night? Nothing of note, Jiraiya said after a moment. Mostly just dams. Dams. Yup, apparently you wanted to see one, he said before pulling a scroll out of his bag successfully. There it is. Anyways, I tried to tell you there wasn't one around but you didn't believe me. Jiraiya summoned the items from the scroll and started making our sandwiches. I no longer focused on him though, instead trying to remember exactly what happened last night. I needed to make sure I didn't let anything slip while my brain was addled by the drugs. It took me a few minutes, but when I was finally able to drag up something from the night before, I was disappointed with what I found. It's dark and I'm blind. Those words echoed through my head as I sat there, frozen in place. How was I supposed to fix this? I told him. He knew. He wasn't supposed to know. My brain worked as quickly as possible, trying to find a solution, but nothing was turning up. See, now that's what I was raising you for. Didn't think lowering your resistance to the drug would make you so loose-lipped. Shut up, and why the hell did you do that? Alone, the stuff he gave you would have barely took the edge off if you just sat there. So I decided to help a little bit. Mostly so I didn't need to hear your yelling and cursing all night long. So this is all your fault. You're not blaming your inability to keep your mouth shut on me. That's all you, Kit. Hey brat, Jiraiya called before I could come up with a snappy comeback. He was waving what I assumed was a sandwich in front of my face. Do you want it or not? I took it without a word, taking a bite but not actually tasting anything. Are you all right over there? Jiraiya asked after a moment. I turned back towards him to find he was observing me, holding his own sandwich close to his mouth as if he had stopped mid-bite. Yeah, I muttered, Well, about last night's conversation. I was at a loss for words, unsure of what I should say in order to convince him to not believe me. Jiraiya sighed, setting his sandwich down on his leg in order to give me his full attention. I'm guessing you remember now, I just wanted to say that I was really loopy and anything said back then shouldn't be taken at face value at all. It was probably something my stupid, drugged mind came up with because it couldn't function properly. I mean, it's really nothing to get worked up about. At all, I said, the floodgates breaking loose once I found more than one word to string together. I would have kept going if Jiraiya didn't hold up a hand to stop me. Naruto, I already know. Oh, I said after a moment, feeling a little relieved that I didn't actually tell him something he didn't know. It was a few seconds later that I actually comprehended his statement. What do you mean, you know? End chapter 40. Start chapter 41. Blindsided by twice the trouble. T1. Tilde 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 tilde. What do you mean, you know? Exactly what I said, I already know. I didn't think it was that hard to comprehend, Jiraiya said as he picked up his sandwich once again. For a good few seconds, I could do nothing but gawk at him. How do you know? I told you he's good at his job, the Kyuubi pipped up before Jiraiya could answer. I sent him a mental glare that only made him chuckle. It was obvious, kid. Though apparently not as obvious as it should have been, he said, almost to himself. I sent him a glare as well, just for good measure. You did pretty good, kept me in the dark, so to speak, for about a week. Do you remember getting your book back from that pretty ramen stand waitress? Ayame, yeah, that was almost a month ago. What of it? You were reading the book upside down. He took a bite of his sandwich as I gawked at him for a few seconds. Seriously, I exclaimed, making the man chuckle around his food. That's how you knew. Kakashi even had a better answer than that. I didn't choose how I found out, Gaki. Between that and the fact that you didn't recognize the main character's name, I was pretty certain I was right, he said after swallowing the food in his mouth. Though I did wave a hand in front of your face just to make sure. No, you didn't. I would have noticed. You thought it was wind. I guess you went to Kaka-sensei after that, I said around a pout. That's why he let me go with you, isn't it? Because you already knew. Sounds about right. Our conversation lapsed into silence for a while as we ate. It was a lot for me to process, finding out that he knew most of the time I've been training with him. I wasn't sure exactly how I felt about it. On one hand, it really was a relief that I didn't need to hide it from him anymore. On the other, I was sort of angry that he'd known for almost a month yet hadn't said anything to me about it. I was so lost in thought that I had only taken a few bites in the time it took Jiraiya to finish his entire sandwich and start another one. I had a lot of questions and figured it was better to ask him now than wait. Hey Ero-sanin, I called right before he took a bite of his new sandwich. He sighed. What now? Why was I supposed to have recognized the character's name? I asked, deciding to start with one of the easiest questions I had. Simple, you were named after him. I blinked in surprise, not expecting this as an answer. When I didn't say anything, I noticed Jiraiya's head turn towards me a bit before he set his sandwich aside completely. My main character's name is Naruto, spelled with the same kanji as your name. Your father read my book and decided he liked the character so much he was going to name his son after him, he said, sounding as if he were lost in a pleasant memory. Your mother agreed, but only because it was a ramen topping. You knew my parents. Jiraiya seemed to pause for a moment, like he was figuring out how he should say something. Yes, very well in fact. He spoke slowly as he fiddled with what was probably a crumb left on his pants. Who were they? What were they like? I asked, leaning forward in anticipation for the answer. I barely noticed that my sandwich had somehow made its way into the dirt next to me, but I hardly cared anyways. Jiraiya paused again, his silence stretching longer than it should have. Please tell me. Everyone else likes to pretend I don't have parents at all. It helps them feel better about themselves if they only see me as the Kyuubi kid and not someone else's. I used to ask Gigi, but he always told me I wasn't ready and changed the subject. He was right, and honestly, you're still not ready. Why the hell not? I demanded, desperation turning to anger. I'm a ninja. I'm already risking my life on missions every day. If that's not the definition of ready, then what is? Your parents were very powerful ninjas, he said calmly, despite my outburst. As powerful as they were, they ended up making a number of powerful enemies. If any of those people heard even a rumor that they had a child, all that pent-up rage they couldn't take out on them, they'd take out on you. I can handle it. No, you can't. I glared at him for a long moment before turning away. My eyes dropped to the ground as they began filling with tears. I moved my goggles and swiped at the tears angrily. This was not how this conversation was supposed to have gone. That question was supposed to be the easiest to answer, not lead into a whole bunch more that he can't. You take a lot after your mother, Jiraiya said quietly. My head snapped towards him on its own accord. She was hyper and often swayed by her emotions. More than once your father stepped in to break up fights that started when one of their classmates insulted her hair. There were 3 things in life she loved more than everything else: ramen, your father, and you. She died the day you were born. They both did, but I doubt either of them could have cared for you more if they wanted to. I have her surname, right? I asked, my voice cracking a bit. I could feel tears running down my face, but I didn't bother to wipe them away this time. They thought it best. Your father's name was more well known. If you had his surname, anyone with half a working brain cell could figure out their identities. He was the Jinchuriki before me, wasn't she? How do you figure that? Jiraiya asked after a pause. Fu-sensei said he only knew one person in Konoha that ever spoke as lightly of foxes as I do, and that she had the same surname as me. I can only think of one reason why she would, because she knew the fox better than everyone else. I'm going to have a talk with that sensei of hers. A nice, long talk. Possibly as he hangs upside down over the edge of the Hokage monument. He'd deserve it, I said with a small chuckle. He's an ass. We were quiet for some time as I sat there processing what I had heard. It made sense in a way, as much as the whole thing annoyed me. If my parents were as powerful as Ero Sennin said, then they had to have made some equally powerful enemies. It's not unheard of for hatred for a single person to spread to that person's family as well. It's a horrible truth about the world, but it didn't make it false. After a while I reached into my weapons pouch and pulled out the book I had been carrying for the past month, holding it gingerly. It was more than just a book that my sensei gave me now. It was a small, almost insignificant tie to parents I'll never meet. In the span of a few minutes, this book became precious to me, yet I couldn't even read it. Do you want me to read it? Jiraiya asked. I turned away from the book to find him sealing the rest of our lunch back into its seal. I could read it out loud for you. It's a pretty short book, so I'm sure we could have it done by nightfall. You would? I asked, surprised for what felt like the millionth time that day. Yeah, we could use a little break from traveling. And by we, I mean you. Your leg's still broken after all. He stuffed the scroll back into his bag before holding a hand out for the book. I shrugged. Sure, I said, handing it over easily. Who better to read it out loud than the author? Exactly what I was thinking. He flipped to the front of the book. He paused for a moment, making the sound equivalent to a grimace as he did. Keep in mind that this was my first published novel, so the quality sucks. Don't judge it too badly since it's such an old story. My new stuff is a lot. Just read already. Fine, pushy brat. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. 2 days later. Hey sensei, I called, getting him to glance back at me as I did. I was finally able to walk on my own this morning and was taking full advantage of it by practicing the trick with a different water balloon as we traveled. Apparently he had a lot more of those stashed into his bag than I thought physically possible. Are you going to read the book again tonight? What? No, you've already had me read it 3 times. I'm not reading it again, he called back, crossing his arms across his chest as he spoke. I picked up my speed a bit so I could walk next to him, my limp more apparent at the faster pace. Even though my leg was usable, it still hurt a good deal, therefore I still wasn't walking quite right. It was only twice, I told him simply. 3. You had me read it twice the first day but fell asleep halfway through the second, he grumbled. I thought back for a moment. Oh yeah, but that's more like 2.5 then. I'm not reading it again. Come on, it's an awesome book, I pleaded. Like the part where he jumps those bad guys. Or when they try to trap him in the tree and he fights them. Or where he gives him that whole speech about hatred breeding more hatred. I'm glad you like it, he said flatly. He sounded a lot more thrilled the first 5 times I told him this. So. Answer's still no, was my answer. I groaned, throwing my hands in the air in defeat. If you want me to keep reading, then I have other books. I'm not listening to your damn porn books, Erosenin, I told him. But they're good literature. And I'm 12. Got to start your education early. Not that early. Jiraiya huffed, muttering something about me not knowing quality literature if it bit me in the ass. I thought about commenting on it. Manly to remind him that muttering wasn't a good way to stay unheard around me, but decided not to. I knew that it would most likely just get us into another argument that would lead to me definitely not getting my reading tonight. Over the last few days I found that I really liked being read to, and not just because the book was good. There was something calming and nice that came with someone reading words on a page I couldn't see. Maybe this was why parents read to their children at night, so they could feel safe as they went to sleep. I couldn't help but feel a little put out that I was forced to miss out on that when I was younger. It would have been great to have someone read me to sleep at night. I shook those thoughts from my head, knowing that stressing over what I missed wouldn't get me anywhere. Especially when it came to this balloon exercise, or even our travels. I raised my nose into the air to try to get a sense of where we were. I could smell the forest and the dirt path just like I have for the last few days. But now there was a hint of water as well, farm animals and people that wafted through the air. Every step forward was making these scents just a little bit stronger. Are we near a town? I asked out loud as I lowered my head to a normal position. Yeah, maybe an hour out, he answered, not bothering to ask how I knew. I can smell the animals the farmers lead to market earlier, I told him anyways. And some sort of lake or pond or something. Good for you, he said quietly. There was a quiet pause before he spoke again. Funny, I didn't think there was any sort of water formation nearby. Guess I was wrong. Of course you are. No one can trick my nose, I exclaimed triumphantly. I'm pretty sure the Yamanaka flower shop begs to differ. Low blow, sensei, I muttered, shooting a small glare his way. Focus on your balloon or I won't be able to teach you the next step. Jiraiya motioned towards the balloon in my hand. But I thought you weren't going to teach me that yet. I thought I wasn't ready or something stupid like that. I did, but with the possibility of more S-ranked kidnappers showing up, I thought you could use a new jutsu. Especially since you have a grand total of 2, he pointed out, ignoring my pout. So, this is how it's going to work. If you complete this step, I'll consider you ready for the next one and show you that. Then again when you complete the second one, I'll show you the third. If you're able to complete all 3 stages of this jutsu then it's yours. Really? Would I lie to you? My own student. His voice sounded overly dramatic, as if he were acting badly on stage. I wouldn't put it past you. Brat. Pervert. That's it, I'm taking it back. If you can't acknowledge me as the super pervert I am then no jutsu for you, he said. You can't do that, I exclaimed, pointing at him with my free hand. You already said you would. Well, I changed my mind. Nope, no way, not believing it, I said, taking a few steps in front of my sensei as I began focusing on the balloon. I'm going to figure out this stage and then make you teach me the next one. Yeah, good luck with that, Jiraiya said, a smirk in his voice. I turned around to face him, intent on giving him a piece of my mind when the smell of water increased suddenly, making me freeze. I had just enough time to curse myself out for not recognizing it earlier before I was side-tackled into the bushes, my balloon soaking the assailant. Hi Naruto-chan. Did you miss me? End chapter 41. This is the end of part 15. If you enjoyed this what if then like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Hope to see you all in the next what if. Peace out.